Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I had tended the cemetery on Hollow Hill for nearly 15 years when the child first appeared. The year was 1893, a winter so cruel that even the crows abandoned the hedgerows. The wrought iron gate, black as tar and twice as heavy, stood at the entrance to the oldest section of the grounds. Beyond it, the path forked into gravel walkways bordered by leaning stones and moss-draped angels whose eyes had long since wept themselves smooth. It was on a stormy evening, one of those tempests that feel almost personal, that I saw him for the first time. A boy no older than 8, dressed in short trousers and suspenders, his white shirt clinging damp to his small frame. He stood beyond the gate, hands folded neatly before him, staring straight through the bars as though waiting to be invited in. At first I thought him lost. Villagers often took the shortcut past the cemetery on their way to the mills, but never after dark. I raised my lantern and called out, "Boy, you'll catch your death out there. Come inside till the storm passes." He didn't move, only blinked slowly, as though recalling how to mimic the living. Lightning tore across the sky, white and wide as a wound. In that brief flash, I saw his eyes the color of washed glass. When the darkness folded back over us, he was gone. The following morning, I dismissed it as exhaustion. The long nights and damp air often conjure shapes that aren't really there. But the next evening, when the clouds swelled again with thunder, I saw him once more. Same place, same posture, same unblinking stare. This time I approached with the keys in my fist, my boots sinking into the mud. "Where are your parents, lad?" I asked. He tilted his head, not in confusion, but in recognition, as though he remembered my voice from some place far older than the night before. Rain began to fall in needles. I fumbled the key into the padlock, meaning to open the gate and pull him inside before the lightning struck again. But the moment the iron clicked open, the boy vanished. Not ran, not fled, simply ceased. The Biao road beyond was empty, unmarked by footprints. Only my own breath filled the night. Over the next fortnight, he returned with every storm, always at the gate, never closer. One night, I resolved to uncover where he came from. I went early, hiding behind the ledge gate before the rain began. The air grew heavy, the first growl of thunder rolling across the hill. Then he was there again, as if conjured by the storm itself. He did not approach from the road. He formed his outline slowly drawn from the mist. I stepped forward, my throat dry. "Who are you?" He lifted one hand and pointed past me toward the north wall where the oldest children's graves lay half swallowed by weeds. His voice, thin as wind through reeds, barely reached me. "Home." And then he was gone, leaving only the rattle of the iron gate. The next morning, beneath a weak sun, I walked to the section he had pointed to. The grass there grew patchy and cold. The stones eroded beyond recognition. I brushed one clean, tracing the faint letters with my thumb. Arthur Wills, born 1896, died 1904, 8 years old, the same age as the boy. Below his name was a carved likeness, a small child in suspenders and short trousers staring out with solemn eyes. The sculptor had captured him perfectly. Even the eyes, the same pale, washed glass hue. I stood there for several minutes, the world narrowing to the sound of the wind through the grass. I knelt, my palm pressed against the damp earth, and felt something shift beneath it. A vibration, a faint rhythmic pulse, as if the ground itself was breathing. Then, almost lost beneath the wind, came a whisper soft and close to my ear, though no one was there. "You opened the gate." That night, the storm returned. I barred the doors, bolted the shutters, and prayed like a man running out of options. Yet still I heard it, the slow, aching creak of iron hinges swinging open. I didn't go out. I knew better than to answer a voice that no longer had a heartbeat. But when dawn came, I found the gate standing wide, the padlock twisted as if melted. In the mud I saw them, small bare footprints leading inward. They stopped at Arthur Wills's grave. From that day on, I never closed the gate again. For some children, it seems the storm is the only way home. It was early autumn when I found the notebook. Cold air creeping through the bones of the cemetery, like a warning of what was to come. I was repairing the old tool shed by the north wall, a structure more rot than wood at that point. Every hinge moaned, every nail seemed to hold on by habit alone. The ground beneath it had sunk over the years, warped by rain and the roots of the elder tree that loomed above it like a great, black umbrella. I'd been the caretaker of Hollowere Cemetery for 37 years, and in that time I dug, mended, and buried enough to know the earth doesn't give up its secrets easily. But that morning, as I lifted a loose board at the shed's base, my spade struck, something that wasn't rock nor root, nor coffin lid. It gave a dull thud, hollow, wooden, deliberate. I knelt, brushing the soil aside with my hands until I saw it. A small leather-bound notebook, its surface stiff with damp and age. The corners were chewed by worms, the clasp rusted shut. At first I thought it one of my own ledgers. I'd lost plenty over the years. But when I pried it open, the paper within was too clean, too fresh. The first line froze me. Caretaker's log, Hollow Hill, October 14th, 1913. That was impossible. It was only 1893. I turned the page and there it was, my handwriting, the looping H in hollow. The peculiar way I crossed my T's, even the faint smudge of my thumbprint in the margin. But I had never written these words, not yet. The next entries were dated years, decades ahead. Notes about the grounds, the graves, the weather, mundane things at first. Fog thick over the east plot again. Fence by row C needs mending. Ordinary details, but all written in my tone, my phrasing, my hand. It was as if someone or something had taken my life and transcribed it long before I'd lived it. And then halfway through, the tone changed. He walks again, always between midnight and 1. I hear the lantern swinging, though it's been years since I've carried one. I felt the cold crawl up my spine as I read. I had indeed used a lantern for years, an old brass one my father left me, but last week I'd finally replaced it with an oil lamp. The entry was dated 20 years in the future. I turned another page. The ink here bled as though the hand that wrote it trembled. He lingers near the shed now. He hums that same tune, the one he always whistled when digging. He doesn't know he's being watched. My breath caught. I did whistle when I worked. An old hymn from my childhood. It wasn't something many knew. No one living, at least. I closed the book and looked around. The wind had picked up, rattling the shed door on its hinge. I felt foolish standing there, staring at nothing like some nervous schoolboy. And yet, I couldn't shake the sense that I was being observed. That night, I brought the notebook inside the caretaker's house and placed it on my desk. I meant to burn it. God knows I should have, but curiosity is a cruel master. I lit a lamp, poured a measure of whiskey, and opened to the final page. The entry was dated 20 years ahead. October 14th, 1913. He still walks the rows at night. He just doesn't know he's dead yet. I stared at the words until they blurred. My heart thudded like a drum in my chest. The sound of the rain outside grew sharper as if it were striking glass. I looked toward the window and froze. There was a light moving through the graveyard, a lantern's glow bobbing gently with the rhythm of a man's steps. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but then the light passed close enough for me to see the outline behind it. It was me. The stoop of the shoulders, the hat slouched low, the coat patched at the elbows. All of it mine. I was walking the rows, humming softly, the same tune I always whistled when I dug a grave. My hand went to my own chest, expecting to feel my heart hammering, but there was only stillness, an emptiness so vast it rang in my ears. The lantern outside flickered, and the figure turned toward the window. I saw my own face, pale, distant, sunken like the dead. The light flared once more and then went out. The room plunged into darkness. I don't remember sleeping that night. When dawn came, I went to the window, but the graveyard was still. No footprints, no light, only fog curling through the stones like breath. The notebook was gone. Only a faint outline remained on the desk where it had rested, as if the wood had aged around it. They say I was found 3 days later, still sitting at the desk, eyes open, hands folded neatly before me. But I remember none of that. What I do remember, what I still hear, is the scrape of my own boots on gravel each night. The faint hum of that old tune and the whisper that trails behind it like wind through an open grave. He still walks the rows at night. He just doesn't know he's dead yet. It was a curious thing, that chair. No one remembered when it first appeared by the northern fence, only that it had always been there. Older than the caretakers, older than the fence itself, perhaps even older than the graves it guarded. I first noticed it on a fog-heavy morning, the kind when the world feels muffled and small. It sat just beyond the latch gate, half swallowed by ivy and lichen, facing the oldest section of Hollowweir Cemetery, where the ground rises in soft mounds, and the names on the stones have long been rubbed away by rain. The chair was plain, handcrafted, its back carved with a pattern too worn to decipher. Every caretaker before me had called it the watchman's chair. "You'll see," old Finch told me when I first took over his post. His voice rasped like wind through dry leaves. "The chair is meant to keep watch, only it doesn't care much who does the watching." I laughed, thinking it one of those superstitions passed down to frighten new blood. But there was something in the way Finch looked at it, not with reverence, but with a kind of dread softened by resignation that made me uneasy. He left the cemetery that winter, never to return. They said he moved to his sister's home near Whitby. I later found his tools still in the shed, untouched. For months, I avoided the chair, though I passed it every day until one evening in late November. Curiosity got the better of me. The sky was heavy with cloud, the air sharp with that strange metallic scent that comes before snow. I had been working late, mending a broken gatepost near the north fence, when the dust crept in faster than I'd expected. My knees ached. My hands were raw, and the chair sat there inviting in its quiet way. I told myself I'd rest only a minute. The wood was colder than I expected, smooth and oddly warm beneath the surface, as though it remembered the weight of others before me. The view from there was perfect. The rows stretched endlessly toward the chapel, the last light glinting faintly on the marble crosses. That was when I felt it. At first, a slight pressure, light almost pleasant. 2 hands resting gently on my shoulders. I thought it my imagination, the way muscles protest after long work, but the touch was unmistakable. Fingers definite, human. I froze. The air around me grew still, the wind dying entirely. Even the trees stopped moving as if the world were holding its breath. I didn't dare turn around. I remember whispering, "Who's there?" But my voice came out thin and trembling, the sound of someone much older. The hands didn't move. Instead, the weight deepened gradually, like someone leaning forward, pressing down with the slow insistence of familiarity. My pulse hammered. The pressure grew heavier, unbearably so. My shoulders began to burn, the wood beneath me creaking under the strain. I tried to stand, but couldn't. My body refused to obey, pinned by something invisible yet solid as stone. Then a voice, low, close to my ear. "Sit a while longer. He isn't done watching." The breath that carried those words was cold, colder than the air, colder than anything, living. And then it was gone. I fell forward onto the ground, gasping, the chair rocking gently behind me as though someone else had just stood up from it. My lamp had gone out. I scrambled to relight it, my hands shaking too hard to strike the match. When the flame finally caught, I turned the light on the chair. There were marks, 2 dark smudges on the wooden backrest, shaped like hands, and beneath them, newly carved words that hadn't been there before. "He still keeps watch." I stumbled, back to the caretaker's cottage, every step a struggle not to look behind me. I locked the door, though locks mean little against things that don't belong to this world. The next morning I returned at dawn, half hoping the night had fooled me. The chair sat exactly where I'd left it. The handprints were gone, but the words remained, etched deep as if cut by a blade. That evening, I caught the new gravedigger, a boy named Ellis, wandering near the fence. I called out, but he didn't answer. He was staring at the chair. Before I could stop him, he sat. The air stilled, his shoulders straightened, then stiffened. His head tilted as though listening to something I couldn't hear. I ran forward, shouting his name, but when I reached him, his lips were moving silently, mechanically. I pulled him away with all my strength. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. When he finally spoke, his voice didn't sound like his own. "He's still here," he whispered. "He says the night's not done." I took the chair apart that very night, split the wood, burned it in the stove. The fire cracked and spat like it was alive. The flames turned an odd blue, then died too quickly, leaving only cold ash and silence. The next morning, when I walked the grounds, the chair was back, whole, standing exactly where it had always stood by the northern fence facing the graves. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and the air turns to stillness, I swear I see the outline of a man sitting there, shoulders stooped, hands resting gently on another's, watching, waiting. I've learned not to look too long. In this place, some things are meant to watch, and some of us were never meant to stop. It was the sort of night that sits heavy on a man's chest, thick fog curling low to the earth, the kind that swallows up the shape of things and makes you doubt your own footsteps. I had just finished locking the chapel doors when I noticed movement beyond the eastern path. A line of figures, faint at first, emerging one by one from the mist like shadows remembering their form. At first I thought at another late burial, though none had been scheduled. There were perhaps 10 of them, all dressed in the old-fashioned long black coats, high collars, veils over pale faces. They moved in perfect rhythm, slow and deliberate, their heads bowed. No one spoke. No one carried a lantern. Even their boots made no sound against the gravel. It was as though the night itself parted to let them pass. I called out, "Who goes there?" But my voice fell dead in the fog. Not one of them turned. The eastern path leads to the hilltop, the oldest section of Hollowweir Cemetery, where the graves lean like weary shoulders. I had walked it hundreds of times, but never in such silence. Even the crows had gone still. The air was so cold it burned the throat. Something in me, curiosity or perhaps duty, compelled me to follow. My lantern threw a dim ring of light around me, cutting through the fog in trembling strokes. I could see the hem of their coat swaying just ahead, the faint suggestion of movement, but no faces. The further we went, the heavier the air became, thick with that sweet cloying scent of damp soil and wilted flowers, the smell of graves long closed. When we reached the slope of the hill, I noticed something peculiar. No one carried a coffin. The procession was empty, and yet they walked as though escorting something sacred. I stopped at the base of the hill and raised my lantern. The flame wavered violently. The figures continued upward in a slow, unbroken rhythm until the fog swallowed them completely. I hesitated only a moment before following. The path slicked beneath my boots. The sound of my breath, the only living thing left in the world. At the crest, I found the ground untouched. No grave, no mourners, no sign of a burial. Only footprints, dozens of them pressed deep into the damp earth, winding in a perfect circle as if they had gathered around something invisible. I knelt, running my hand over one of the impressions. The soil was cold, unnaturally so. Beneath it, I could feel a faint vibration like the hum of a faraway bell. And then behind me, a whisper. "Late, aren't you?" I spun around, but there was no one, only the fog curling close, whispering against the stones. My lantern flickered. I caught movement again, a shape to my right, then my left, as if the procession had begun once more, encircling me now. I could feel them moving, though I could see nothing. The faint rustle of fabric brushed my sleeve, the icy breath of air stirring the hair on the back of my neck. I called out again, louder this time. "Show yourselves." The flame in my lantern, died instantly, snuffed out as if pinched between fingers. And then came the sound, faint at first, growing clearer. The tread of boots, the shuffle of fabric, the muted rhythm of an unseen march. It circled closer and closer until I could feel the weight of the air pressing in on all sides. I dared not move. Something brushed against my back, cold, deliberate. A hand. Another settled on my shoulder, firm as stone. My breath caught in my throat. The voices rose, whispering all around me, indistinct, layered, sorrowful. I could make out fragments. He's come at last. Too late. Too late. My knees gave way and I fell hard to the ground. The earth felt hollow beneath me, thin like skin stretched over something vast and waiting. I clawed at the soil, desperate to stand, and in doing so, uncovered something smooth and cold bone. That was when the voices stopped. The air cleared. When I looked up again, the fog had lifted. I was alone. The hilltop lay empty under the pale light of the moon. Only the footprints remained, hundreds of them perfectly formed, all leading inwards to that one spot where I knelt. I filled the small hole with shaking hands, muttering a prayer I barely remembered. But even as I stood, I realized something else. New footprints trailed from the circle down the path. Mine. And beside them, a second set, smaller, lighter, keeping pace with every step I took back toward the caretaker's house. I did not look back. That night, as the clock struck 3, I woke to the sound of gravel shifting outside my window, the slow, steady rhythm of a march. I drew back the curtain. The hilltop burned faintly with the light of 100 ghostly lanterns, and there at the head of the procession stood a man in a black coat, my own, lantern in hand, leading the dead uphill. Since then, every fog drowned. Night I hear them again, the empty procession moving toward the hill. I never follow anymore. Some things in this place don't lead to graves. They lead away from them. It had been raining for 3 days straight when I first saw her. A lone figure in black, gliding between the stones with the solemn grace of one who belongs more to the dead than to the living. I was still new to Hollowire Cemetery then, only a month into my appointment as its keeper. The place was vast, too vast for one man and old enough that even the parish records stuttered over its earliest burials. Every week brought new discoveries. A broken monument under ivy, a sunken crypt, a forgotten inscription. But nothing unsettled me quite like her. She came every Sunday, always alone, always at the same hour, 4:30, when the church bells had just finished their last echo. Rain or shine, mist or wind, she would appear through the gate in that same heavy morning dress, her face veiled in black lace, her gloved hands clutching a small bundle of white lies. She walked with purpose down the eastern path across the lower terrace to the farthest row where the ground dipped toward the old yew trees. There she would kneel before an unmarked patch of grass. No stone, no name, nothing but earth. At first, I assumed she visited a grave whose marker had been lost to time. We have many like that. But her devotion was too precise, her silence too heavy. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I approached quietly, careful not to startle her. The air was thick with drizzle. It pattered gently against her veil as she arranged the leaves, each stem placed with meticulous care. "Beg pardon, miss," I said, my voice low. "You've been coming here every Sunday." I wondered whose rest you tend. She didn't move. For a moment, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then slowly she turned her head just enough that I saw the faint curve of her lips beneath the veil. "My keeper," she said softly. The words were simple, but the tone, sweet and strange, pricked at my nerves. "Your keeper," I echoed. "Was he family?" She shook her head once. "No," she whispered. "He tended the grounds. He kept the gate. He watched the dead." A chill rolled through me. The last caretaker before me, Mr. Armitage, had died not a year prior. A heart attack, they said, though the old gravedigger swore he'd found him sitting upright in the chapel, eyes open as if waiting. for something. Before I could ask more, the woman rose. She laid one final lily upon the soil, turned without another word, and walked back into the fog. Her black figure dissolved into the distance, leaving only the faint smell of wet flowers behind. That night, the rain grew fierce. I sat in my cottage by the window watching the wind shake the use when a sound made me start a sharp splitting crack that tore through the storm. It came from the northern plot. Lantern in hand, I trudged through the mud, my boots sinking deep into the soaked ground. When I reached the eastern row, my breath caught. The headstone of my predecessor, Mr. Armitage, had split clean in two. The break was smooth, unnaturally so, as if carved by a deliberate hand. Rain pulled in the fracture, gleaming like an open wound. Something else caught my eye. A single white lily laid carefully against the stone's broken base. I stood there for a long while, the wind pressing hard against my coat, my heart thudding with a rhythm that wasn't quite my own. Somewhere in the dark, the chapel bell gave one hollow toll, though no one was inside to ring it. When I returned to my cottage, my reflection in the window startled me. There were muddy fingerprints on my shoulders, two perfect prints as if someone had stood just behind me in the storm, their hands resting gently on me while I stared at that broken grave. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I searched for her. No sign of footprints near the unmarked plot. No sign of her flowers, only flattened grass where she had once knelt. I asked the parish clerk if he knew of any woman fitting her description. He frowned, rifling through the records. There was one, he said slowly. A Miss Agatha Wren lived by the rectory some years ago, buried here herself after the caretaker's death. Odd woman, no family. Buried, I repeated. Where? He scanned the ledger, then tapped the page with his finger. Eastern row near the use unmarked plot. That was when I realized I had seen her every Sunday since I took the post, and not once had she cast a shadow. I keep her lies now in the chapel, though they never wilt. And on Sundays, when the bells toll 4, I stand by my window and see her, figure again, gliding through the fog. She stops at that patch of earth and kneels just as before. But lately, she's begun to turn her head more often to look toward my cottage, as if she knows I'm watching. And last night, when I went to the mirror, I noticed something new. The faint outline of two dark handprints resting on my shoulders again. This time, they weren't made of mud. They were made of ash. Thank you all for joining me on these journeys. Your support means everything, and I love reading your reactions and personal experiences in the comments. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat or gave you chills, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more haunting stories. Have you ever experienced something similar? Or perhaps you have your own unexplainable story to share? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Each of your stories adds another layer to our growing community of horror enthusiasts. And if you think someone else might enjoy a good scare, don't forget to share this video with them. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video if you dare.